I'm Lex Thomas. Here at Sterling-Lancaster Community Television, we realize that the events and the issues that affect Sterling and Lancaster are things that people really want to know about and need to have a way of hearing about, and also that the towns want a way of communicating with residents about the issues that are coming up in the next year. So we're launching this new program that is going to give the officials and townsfolk from both towns an opportunity to talk about those issues and talk about what people can expect. And also we encourage feedback and hopefully increased community participation in dealing with these issues. So today, for our very first broadcast, I am delighted to welcome Town Administrator for Sterling, Ross Perry. And Ross, you and I have spoken many times, and I always enjoy those chats. You're always a total font of information. So my first question to you is going to be, what can people look for over the next year? Now, right off the bat, I know that this is budget time and getting ready for the annual town meeting. What's going on with those things?
Well, that is basically my life for the next 4 months. We started budget meetings last night with the Finance Committee. 2 nights ago, we met with Capital Planning. It looks like we're looking at a $25 million budget for Sterling. That includes schools. It's a long way from being final, but we are making progress. We also have a number of capital projects that look like they're coming forward this year. So that's ongoing life as usual in Sterling Town Hall, is budget prep.
Now, I know that when you're working on budget, so that involves the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, the Capital Committee,
Well, it starts with involving the departments. Each department has presented their own budget. I review those budget requests with them to understand what they're looking for. Maybe there's things that we can put off. Those numbers then get forwarded to the Finance Committee, where the Finance Committee will scrutinize the budget requests. They'll eventually go to the Selectmen for their review. There's a joint meeting with all boards Saturday, March 2nd, when everybody will have one more chance to come in and pitch their budget and answer questions. And then the Finance Committee will debate, discuss, and finally vote their support on each request. And that's what turns into the warrant that people will vote for at town meeting.
Right. Now, I know that there are a lot of things going on in town right now, so let's just talk about some of them. First thing is the town planning, which I know has been really something that you've promoted and something that's so important to the town. Where is that at this point?
That's actually very exciting. The town's master plan is now actively moving forward. This is a document that dates back to 1962. Theoretically, they get updated every 10 years, so it's about time that this one be looked at. With the town's support last year, we appropriated funds to hire a town planner. So we've hired a town planner, and she's working actively with a master plan group of volunteers. They're not a formal committee at this point, but they are a group of volunteers that will be working with the planning board to scope out and determine a master plan. A master plan is really a roadmap for where the town wants to be 5, 10, and 20 years from now.
Now, how are you getting that information about where the town wants to be?
It's meetings with as many people as want to attend them. They actually will be having an open house and a focus group type venue coming up soon. But this is a chance for people to participate and put in their views of what's available and what they want to be available.
Now, I think there's also talk right now about the recreation department and a facility for them. What can you tell us about that?
The rec department has indicated that they would like to have more playing fields and possibly even a recreation facility. And that's about as much definition as we've heard. I think they're actually planning to form a committee to help them research those requirements, come up with a scope of the project, then start looking at locations. So that's a ways off, but yes, there is a group that's actively looking at recreation department requirements.
And insofar as that goes, almost along that same line, pickleball and the pickleball
Yes.
fields. And, you know, for our viewers that don't know this, pickleball is, believe it or not, the fastest growing sport in America. And this is something that can really attract all ages, and it's a wonderful sport. So tell us what's going on with that.
So located in West Sterling are existing tennis courts and basketball courts that are in disrepair. They've been put in 25 or 30 years ago. The surface is all cracked. It's time for them to be refreshed. So there is a group that actually wants to put pickleball on top of the tennis courts. We are out to bid now and have had multiple vendors interested. Bids are due next week, so we'll actually have some real cost numbers. And then it'll be up for the pickleball supporters to pitch to the Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee, to see if they can get their support, and eventually take it to town meeting for all the residents to vote on that.
Excellent. What else have you got on your list? What other issues can we expect to see?
There's an interest in finding a permanent location for the Sterling Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Sterling Fair is renowned. It's one of the few fairs that's still free entry and free parking. I think last year they had 40,000 people visit the site, and there's a group that's looking at trying to find a permanent site. So eventually, that if they find something, that may come forward as a town meeting request as well.
And you know, every year there seem to be more people that attend the fair. It's you know, it's very popular. It's got a reputation, and it's always a great time.
It's a great event. I've been for a couple of years now, and I really enjoy going there with my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another project is the town center renovation. This is to look at sidewalks and starting with getting the overhead utilities underground, and then to redo the sidewalks. This will probably include ADA ramps, re-layout of some parking. So I'm going to be putting together a working group to work on that project shortly.
And the ADA ramps are, of course, the disability.
Yes.
That all has to do with that, and so yes.
So once we have a fine-tuned scope of services, this was a project that initially started in 2007. I have found the plans. I've gotten a hold of the engineer that created those plans. He's offered to come back for a free visit to help us get them updated. And when we have a new scope, then we'll go out looking for grant funds to help cover some of that cost.
And you know, I think what you're talking about here with grant funds, and I know that this is something in an area in which you have a great deal of both expertise and ability, but there's a lot of grant funding available, but you have to know how to go after it.
You have to know how to find it. You have to go be able to apply for it. So far, since I've been here, we brought in $300,000 of grants.
It's amazing.
And that's not counting what the 1835 committee has brought in on their own for that project.
And I think this is another reason why the master plan is so important, because I think that for a lot of grant funding, they require to see a town plan. Is that not correct?
Yes, exactly. The master plan can be an enabler for these type of grants. Join the community compact that we did a year and a half ago turned out to be an enabler that got us some money for the elevator in the 1835 building. So one program can open the doors for the next program.
For the next, exactly. And speaking of the 1835 building, what is going on there? I know that there's a lot going on, but what can you
The
tell
major
us?
roof repair has been fixed. They fixed the structural beams in the roof with steel plates that have been bolted in place. The asphalt's been removed, and the slate tiles have been removed, and a new asphalt roof put on, and the ADA required elevator or lift has been put in. So that's actually, I think it's supposed to be inspected and put into service today.
And I know also that one of the things that is important to you and the town is to work with the business community. And there is a Sterling Business Association that is just ramping up, and of course I'm involved with getting that going. So but I think that this is an important thing, and it's something that I feel there's a tremendous amount of support from the town.
Absolutely, and the small business or the Sterling Business Association will be tied into the sidewalk renovation plan, as it will impact many of their businesses. So hopefully they will step forward and help us with that project as well.
Now, of course, there is the staff here at the town hall. There are all the boards and committees. But how can people get involved, and why should they get involved in these issues?
Good question. There are a number of positions that will be up for re-election this year. Selectmen, assessors, Board of Health, Department of Public Works, the Light Department, Housing Authority, Library, Planning Board, and the school committees. So if people are interested in running for any of those positions, they should see the town clerk to take out papers. And
that's a very simple process. It's a matter of getting the papers. You need to get a certain number of signatures, and I sit on the library board, and I know I made that decision at a very, very late date, and it was just basically I kind of hung out around a few of my favorite places in Sterling where I knew that friends were gathering and whatnot, and got those signatures. It's not really a daunting process, but I think it's so important for people to have their voice heard.
Absolutely. We have a great staff in Town Hall. We run the building on a day-to-day basis, but it's the people in these boards and committees that will be setting the policies and sort of the longer vision. There's also dozens of volunteer positions that are open. That list can be found on the Selectmen's webpage as well as the application form. But if people want to get involved in some of these working committees, there's lots of opportunities for people to work. And it can be several nights a month, it can be one night a month, it can be a couple meetings a year. It really depends upon what the committee's function is.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I know that the town is working on really keeping the website up to date. There's now a Facebook page for the town, and so there's lots of ways for people to find out what is going on and how to get involved. And so that sounds terrific. We've just got another couple of minutes, Ross. Anything that you would like to add?
I think Sterling's a great community. We've got good financial, we're in a good financial condition. In fact, we just passed our audit with no major findings. Everything seems to be in order. And I would encourage people to step up, step in, help at whatever level they think they can. There's openings on boards, there's opening on volunteer committees. Great opportunity to get their voice heard and help set the direction for Sterling.
I think that's so important too, because when we're talking now about the possibility of a new rec facility, I know one of the things that people will say is, oh my goodness, it took so long to get the senior center going, and there was just so much involved with that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that long and drawn out a process, and hopefully it won't be if we get enough people involved and enough people talking about what this town needs.
I think grassroots projects that are driven and with the enthusiasm of the public, of the residents, of the taxpayers, to me that's the fun part of town. Mm-hmm. That means there's interest in making Sterling better, and I love to see the public involved. Gives me a challenge of trying to help figure out how to fund it.
Sure.
But it's up for the voters to decide what they want Sterling to do. And these projects are examples where they can voice their interests.
And I know that certainly people in the community have expressed to me that they, appreciate your openness, your availability, and the information that they can always get from either your office or from other offices here at Town Hall. So, well, it sounds like you've got a very, very full roster, so I'm not going to take any more of your time because I think you need to get back to planning the budget. Thank you so much, Ross, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, Lex. Thank you for coming in.
I'm pleased to be with the town administrator for the town of Lancaster, Orlando Pacheco. Orlando, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And once again, I'm going to ask now, what can Lancaster residents expect to be going on this year? I mean, first of all, I'm sure that you're deep within the budget process.
We are.
And prepping for the annual town meeting. So
we're at sort of the tail end of our capital planning, and as we try to merge that into the overall operating budget. So it's again, this year, like most others, is somewhat challenging. The real driver right now, because we haven't had the final school assessment from Neshoba, is going to be Minuteman. Minuteman assessment is up at around 16% because the full debt service on a new school is now fully hitting the tax bills. So you've been putting money aside in stabilization to try to lessen some of the impact of that on tax bills, but of course even a 16% assessment is going to make that even more challenging, not knowing where Neshoba is going to end up, and then trying to plan for a lot of capital projects. It's going to be a challenge.
Sure. Now, when you talk about the Minuteman, now tell me about that. What is that?
So Minuteman, we've changed the regional school district agreement with a new school coming on. So the way a town is assessed a capital project, which essentially a new school construction is the ultimate of capital projects, it's based on a rolling average of enrollment. Now Lancaster actually sends the second most kids to Minuteman Regional High School with the exception of Lexington. So we're bearing a very high share of the overall debt service related to that project. So obviously financing a project that's $145 million, even after the state reimbursement, it's a challenge for any community.
Absolutely. What else is on the docket
So
this year?
As I talk about capital projects, I mean, the big push is going to be, we have some infrastructure needs that we'd like to start addressing. 3 priority projects in particular on top of our normal, our normal set of capital work. The bridge at 117 and at Bartlett Pond, that area as you're heading towards Leominster, that bridge, while not failing, is in need of some maintenance in order to avoid a much larger capital project. We've got a window of opportunity here where we can do some work to the bridge and increase its overall life cycle substantially. If we don't do anything, my concern is the bridge will eventually crumble and will force a much larger expenditure that will be even more challenging later on. So we are applying for some grant monies, some small bridge grant monies, which would be about $500,000, and hopefully we would bridge the gap. We think the overall work would be somewhere in the $700,000 to $800,000 range. So obviously there's still a financial contribution for the town, but if we were able to receive that funding, it would alleviate a large amount of what we'd have to come up with. We're also looking at replacing the culvert on Brockman Road, which again is in that area, and it's somewhat related to the Bartlett Pond recreational area, or the Weeki Brook now that the dam's not there. But that would improve stream flows there, which the culvert, while structurally okay, doesn't really help the overall environmental status there. And the culvert's old and will eventually start to fail. So we're just trying to be proactive with some of our infrastructure. But the big project we still continue to pursue is the redesign of the intersections at 70 and 117, both at Severn Bridge Road and at Lunenburg Road. I think last time we spoke, we were at 25% design. We're now at 75% design and moving right along to 100%. It is our hope to have that project ready to go for the end of 2020.
Excellent, yeah.
That project is going to be a TIP project, so the town is really putting up all the design and engineering money up front to get it fully permitted. We'll have to do any land acquisitions, acquire any easements, any right-of-ways, but our goal is to have that project ready to go. And obviously 117 is going to be a bit of a disruption for people for the foreseeable future. We have to do some paving out there. I think people have seen the road condition and they're very frustrated by it because when we finished the water line work that we had talked about last time, there was some trench patching that was done. That has settled somewhat. So the road condition there hasn't been ideal, and so getting that done is certainly going to be important.
Now, obviously, there are committees and boards and selectmen that are very involved in this. How, with any of these projects, how can the public become involved? What's the mechanism for that?
Well, I think the public needs to continue to reach out to the town directly. I think the biggest mistake the public makes is it relies on social media to continue to get its information. And social media, by its very nature, is easily manipulated by the people who are the most active in it. And so I think people need to be careful of where they're getting their facts and what facts are being released versus what isn't being released. And that's not just related to infrastructure projects, that's with anything going on in town.
Sure.
You're never going to get 100% of what you need just based on social media. Use it as a guide to continue to get more information. And you know, you can be involved without being on a board or a committee. You can be involved without being elected. We understand that level of service might not be for anybody, but if you have a particular interest or goal that you're looking to advance within the town, feel free to just contact me or one of the selectmen or a particular board or committee and just try to work through them to advance it. You know, we've seen that happen on a number of occasions where people are reluctant because of their work life or their home life that they can't contribute a certain level of time, but to accomplish specific goals or agendas, you know, that can easily be done without necessarily having to serve at that capacity.
And I think that involvement is so important in terms of even just the town knowing what the public will is and people feeling that they're involved and that they've got some role in this.
Absolutely. You know, towns like a Lancaster don't survive without a certain level of citizen involvement. The towns are smaller, and I think that's what makes town government a little bit special. A little open town meeting. Anybody who's a registered voter can actively participate. You know, it gives us as town employees direct opportunity to work with residents and not necessarily always having to deal through politicians, which is something that you don't get in a larger city form of government or even a larger town form of government.
Yeah.
You know, residents can and do seize the process when they do it properly.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of social media, I know that there's been a lot of buzz about the senior center.
Yes.
What is going on with that? What do you want to say about that?
Well, what I can say is the senior center is fine. Programs are operating as they always were. Van services are available, outreach services are available. Nothing for the most part has changed at the community center. In fact, I'm surprised to see and hear some of the things that I'm hearing. If there's any senior that needs any services, they should just reach out to the senior center as they always have. Mm-hmm. Nothing has changed in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it will continue on in that way.
It will continue on. You know, I heard the rumors of, you know, we're trying to close it down or we're trying to send our seniors to Clinton. Again, that information did not come from us. We don't know where it came from. You know, we see spatterings of certain information on social media about benefactors paying for classes. The fact is, financial ability has never restricted anybody from ever paying for attending a class before. So I don't know why that was an issue now. The town has sufficient resources to do that. In fact, one of the things I mentioned to the Council on Aging at their last meeting was they actually gave back $6,000 a year for the last few years. So if they're saying they don't have money for programs, then we keep saying, well, why aren't you spending what we're appropriating?
Sure.
So some of these things are a little confusing. We think there's definitely a desire to paint things in a more negative light right now. But, you know, you're entitled to your own opinion, but the facts speak for themselves.
Sure, sure. Now, also, I'm sure that a very reliable source of information too is the town website.
Absolutely.
Yes. So
The town website, and feel free to reach out to the chairs of particular committees. This office is always available. You know, people send me emails at all sorts of times of day and night, and I'm always responding. My cell phone is actually the number on the website. That's not the landline to town hall. I don't encourage you to call at 3 a.m, but if you need to call after hours, I am here readily available to any resident of Lancaster at any time. Certainly, and that was just the design of people reaching out on weekends with emergencies, and newer residents who didn't know how to navigate various aspects. Obviously, the community center is open on weekends, and so we needed to make sure people had access to myself or facilities, our facilities manager, if there was an event going on at that facility. So sometimes it's not always convenient, or people don't always want to just roll into the police department and ask questions because they realize those guys are out on the street trying to do their job. So
Sure.
it's nice to have another avenue.
I think as well, one of the reasons that sometimes people might be a little hesitant or whatnot is that I think there is really such a push now on transparency and on availability and accessibility, and town administrators like you are putting that into practice, and that's possibly not always how it's been. So it's a bit of a learning curve.
I think also the needs and the will of what people want has changed. I think transparency, though, becomes tough when there are still laws on the books that limit how transparent you can be in various circumstances. And so I feel like that erodes people's confidence in government in general, especially town government, where we're closest to the people. People want to hear and know about certain things, and when the response from town government is, well, we can't do that because it could end up, costing us money in litigation someplace else, or it's not procedurally appropriate given other laws on the books. I think people say, well, those laws shouldn't exist because ultimately we're paying taxes. We should know what's happening.
Sure.
I fully agree. Yeah, you'll never hear me not want to give somebody information that I can legally give them.
Sure.
So I think we try to do our best. We certainly try to make as much information available. What we find, though, in practicing transparency is there's so much information to give that there's only so many places you can put it. And sometimes it's not a matter of us putting the information out there, but where do we put it in a place that's easy for people to find? Our goal is to try to make information available on our website within 3 clicks. But given the amount of information, sometimes that's difficult. And if information isn't readily available, sometimes people give up looking for it, and that's something we want to try to avoid either. Some of our best work comes from people actively looking for information and helping us perfect what we've already put into practice. Sure.
What else is on the books that you'd like to talk about?
A lot of development projects are still out there. Obviously, the 40B project has been very active. It seems to be moving along through the permitting process. How that ends up, I think the ZBA would be better to answer that, but it seems like there's been some progress made in reducing the density of the project, which has been an overarching concern for the town. One of the things we're still seeing, which I'm surprised given the reduction in the overall incentive, is still a lot of solar development outside of residential rooftop, which to me is concerning in the sense that I don't always think it's the highest and best use for property, but property owners have rights as to what they want to do with their property, and as long as it's zoned accordingly, there's nothing we can do. But obviously off Route 2, the old golf center, there's a large solar development earmarked for that property, and then up on Four Pond Road, there's another one. Manny's Dairy Farm, their solar project is expanding. So again, I'm not so sure it's the highest and best use. It is what the property owners want to do, and it is zoned accordingly. So you're going to see some of that development. We're also getting more and more inquiries about marijuana in various forms, whether it's medical, recreational. Obviously, the town is zoned for medical. There is no recreational. But now we're seeing a lot more interest in growing facilities for manufacturing, which if you're in the commercial zoning district is allowed. And so we're starting to feel those potentials out. And for us, I think it's not just whether it's allowed, but how it's designed and how it's implemented. Sure. So we are seeing an uptick in activity. One of the questions we get the most about is what's happening with the possible racetrack development.
Right, of course.
So what I can tell people about that is there's been some internal developments with the Stronach group that I think might have hindered that a little bit. That's not to say that it's completely out of the realm of possibility. There has been legislation filed in the State House that would allow horse racing outside of Suffolk County. But Lancaster is not the only place that's been proposed. There has been a facility proposed out in the Berkshires as well. And so we'll just have to see how the Gaming Commission goes through that process. But sure. What I thought, 6-8 months ago, that was more of I would say 6 months ago, that was more certain that Lancaster would be, if it was to happen, it would be in Lancaster. I would have to take that down a notch. Right. I don't know if I would have the same level of enthusiasm as I did before. And I think it's just important for residents to know sort of where things stand in the process.
Exactly.
And that's not the type of thing that we put on the website or you see every day or people report on, but it is something that I think especially the residents in that area of town, they certainly have they certainly have an interest in, as it would impact them directly.
Absolutely.
And then I think, we're still working on tweaking some zoning, trying to see where we can encourage certain types of use. And then this spring, we're hoping to finish the first phase of Thayer Field. So we are looking to install a splash pad sometime before, definitely before June 30th, but hopefully in time for the warm weather. And we think that will complement the park that's already been completed.
So a lot going on.
A lot going on, and we still have green communities and other energy efficiency work we're doing. We're settling into this new building nicely.
Yes, it's quite something.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I think it turned out really well. We've had no maintenance issues for the most part.
Sure.
So yeah, no, there's definitely a lot going on. Lighting retrofits in the senior center still. Yeah, plenty of things on our plate, and we just tackle them one by one.
Thank you so much for bringing us and our viewers
I'm
up
happy.
to date on this.
Let's do this more often.
Absolutely, I look forward to it.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Lex.
Orlando.
Good to see you.
Good to see you
Take
too.
care.
Thank you for watching.